Hi, Cheryl. Thank you ever so much for joining us today on the podcast. Series one is Are You the Perfect Parent? So we're going to kick straight off with that. Everybody that comes on, we kick off with the same question. So, Cheryl, are you the perfect parent?
I guess you have to ask my children that.
Yes.
Um, but there will be days that they may say, "Yeah, Mum, you're doing all right," and there'll be days I'd imagine that they'll say, "Mum, hell no, you are embarrassing me. You are a nightmare. You are annoying." Um, but the perfect parent, is that even a thing?
I don't, I don't think so.
Does that even exist? I mean, for me, I guess I do what I think is right for me, my children, and my family. Um, I mean, I always joke because I've worked in early years for a long, long time. And I always joke that once my children got to 5, I really didn't have a clue what I was supposed to be doing with them.
Yeah.
And my eldest is now 16, and quite frankly, I'm winging it. I am completely winging it. Um, I mean, for me, it's that, you know, the whole parenting journey has been a different one to what I thought it was going to be. But I kind of, I believe I'm doing the best that I can do with the resources that I've got.
Yes. Yeah.
And when I'm talking about resources, I mean, you know, my mental capacity, my experiences, you know, I had I had a good childhood, so I draw on that. You know, with in terms of my parents, there were moments where it was tough. Me and my dad didn't always have the greatest of relationships, and I that's the one thing I hold on to is that sometimes the way my dad made me feel, because he was a perfectionist, and
Okay.
he was a you know, you can do better, you can do better, so you will do better,
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Yeah.
push you to do better. And
Quite a lot of pressure.
a lot of pressure. He was
Mhm.
um he was a policeman, and yeah, there was a lot of pressure. I remember he stood over me when I was doing my homework. You know, oh, that's wrong.
Wow.
You sure that's right, Cheryl? Are you sure? So I question my even as an adult now, I question everything that I do because I think I've still got my dad in my head.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious that I don't bring that to my children. So I guess we learn from stuff, don't we, in terms of the way that we were raised and our own.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we all bring that, don't we? Well, our experience of our parents, and then do we want to be like them or not like them, or a bit about them and bits we want to change?
Exactly.
But
You kind of,
that's your reference point.
yeah, I think you can kind of prune off the bits that you liked. And I think for me, you know, a lot of it is based on how things made you feel. Um, so I'm very conscious of that, not to necessarily be the, you know, the push, certainly from an academic perspective. That was very much, you know, sort of driven into me by my dad, and led by a little bit of fear, I think, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to ever upset my dad. um, so, and I think, you know, I believe I've created a safe home
Yeah.
for my children to be their true self. And I guess a lot of that, you know, I see that a lot. You know, I have a prolific masker. And I see it when he comes home and explodes. So I kind of feel from that yes, I have created a place where he feels safe enough to do that. So um,
So
in
you
terms
live as part of a neurodivergent family.
we are,
You're
yes,
doing things differently.
we are living life differently. Yeah, my eldest son is autistic and has sensory processing differences, and my youngest son is dyslexic. So yeah, we do things differently, and I've had to learn that, you
Yeah.
know, over the years, that and it's okay to do things differently. Um, so yes, I do my best on most days. There are days when I really don't get it right. You know, I love what I do as a job, and I speak in front of lots and lots of people about, you know, my lived experiences, and people kind of say, "Oh my gosh, your children are so lucky to have you as a mum, waving the flag and advocating for them." And you know, yes, I do that, but there are other days where I sit in the corner and crumble in my onesie and can't face the world, you know. So, and
Yeah.
you know, yes, my children probably do stay on their devices for far too long, and I feed them chocolate and crisps. And, you know, there are days where I think I just can't do it today. But I guess it's making sure that the days where you kind of go, do you know what? Yes, I am going to do it today, outweigh those ones maybe.
Yeah. And that those ones are normal. Those days come, and it doesn't matter who you are. And I think that's, you know, part of the series is that is trying to show that it doesn't actually matter who you are. There, every parent out there at some point goes, I can't do this, or I'm not doing a good job at this, or I'm rubbish. And we're really quick, I think, as parents, to talk really badly to ourselves. We'd never say it to another parent. We'd never go, I'd never say to you, oh, what were you doing? That was terrible. And I wouldn't even think it. I'd just think you're doing the best that you can. And in the moment, but I'd say it to myself. And I've had to be really strict about saying, if I wouldn't say that to somebody else and I wouldn't say it to another parent, I'm not allowed to say it to myself anymore.
Yeah, that internal dialogue
Yeah.
is really powerful some days. And yeah, you're right. You question yourself. I mean, you know, mum guilt is a real thing.
Yeah.
Guilty for doing, guilty for not doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that hits most of us. You know, you should be doing this. You should, you know, kind of, you know, social media is amazing. You know, it's allowed us to meet each other. Social
Yeah.
media is fab. But it also makes you feel like you are failing at everything.
There's
You
a
know, you
comparison,
should
isn't there?
absolutely, you
Yeah.
should be, you know, you should have the flat stomach and you should be able to walk your 10,000 steps a day and you should be, you know, making all of these meals from scratch and you should be the parent that makes sure that you hit every parents' evening or, you know, the World Book Day costume and you
Oh,
should be
yeah.
able to be, you know, hold down a job or, you know, build a business or whatever it is. You should have this nice clean home. You should be, well, who says?
Yeah.
And some days, you know, certainly for us, not so much now, but certainly when my eldest was younger, some days it's just about survival,
Mm.
just getting through that day and making it to
Yeah.
the end,
Yeah.
however means, you know, in whatever way possible.
Yeah.
Um, and we have to acknowledge that's okay. You're not failing. And the failure would be to do that by yourself, but
Yeah.
reach out to those
Yeah.
people around you and, you know, the resources that you've got.
Yeah.
And know that it's okay.
Yeah.
So no, perfect parent
Mhm.
be way off whatever that even looks like.
Yeah. I've not found one yet. I've not found one. I'm really interested because you kind of briefly touched on the fact, you know, around the work that you do and your experience in early years and kind of that kind of supported your parenting or kind of, you know, gave you ideas or experience or knowledge alongside kind of your parents is, I suppose, a bit about, we'd love to know a bit more about what you do as a job. But I'm really interested in that link about what you've brought from your work maybe into your parenting and what that's kind of helped you with.
I think it's been a little bit the other way round, to
Mhm.
be honest. I mean, I started out in early years back in 1994.
Yeah.
A long time. It's all I wanted to do. I wanted to work with children. I wanted to be a nanny. That was it. That was my
Okay.
goal. And that's what I became. I did. I worked for two separate families over a number of years and absolutely loved it. Um, there were family members that had emigrated to different countries around the world to be a nanny, and I fancied a bit of that. And that didn't happen for me. I just ended up a couple of miles up the road, but loved it.
Mm.
And then kind of, I mean, I won't go through my whole CV, but I then went from working with very affluent families to very vulnerable families. So I worked in a family centre, a
Yeah.
couple of family centres actually for local authority, where I was working with children who had been abused, children who had been neglected, children who were in foster care, supporting children going through that adoption process, and
Mm.
supporting parents, those that were struggling to
Mm.
parent. Those parents that their children were in foster care, but they needed supervised contact for a variety of different
Yeah.
reasons. So I did that for a while. And then moved into local authority and supported settings to go through the Ofsted process and support them throughout their career and training and things like that. And then I got the training bug. That's where it came from.
Okay.
So I became a trainer and an assessor. So working with people that wanted to do their childcare qualifications, lectured in a college for a bit, then went back into one back. I then went into nurseries kind of later on as a quality improvement officer and Senko, lead Senko. And it was basically kind of that alongside the way that life was going personally, starting to identify these differences in my son. And people then started to ask me, Cheryl, we've got this child. I want to help, but I don't know how. And I felt like I was able to support and guide and offer some strategies. And then it was I'd kind of done various different things, but it was about 4 years ago that I thought, you know what, I feel like I felt pulled to do more. So I'm now fortunate enough to have my company, Aperion Training, and I'm now working with predominantly nursery groups and some schools to up and down the UK, from Scotland to Cornwall and everywhere in between, on delivering training, CPD days. I speak at conferences and events all around understanding our neurodivergent children.
So important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And not just understanding, but understanding, accepting, and supporting nurseries predominantly to be neuro-inclusive environments, and that those individuals can become neurodiversity affirming educators. So I talk about our children having differences, not deficits. I talk about understanding our children's play, understanding their sensory needs, understanding the behaviors that come alongside those sensory needs that are not being understood or met. So yeah, I've now started to go international, which is just ridiculous.
So exciting.
Absolutely. I never saw that on the horizon. And have my first book being published early next year, which is, again, ridiculous. Talking about, kind of your internal dialogue and imposter syndrome. I mean, at no point was that. It was like, no, I can't write a book. I can't. What? Don't be silly. I'm not grown up enough to write a book. But I managed it. That was tricky when trying to parent and, be a wife and kind of everything else. But yeah, that's what I do, and feel like I use my parenting experiences as well as my professional experiences in the job that I do, and bring kind of both levels, I guess, and that's what resonates with a lot of people, because a lot of the educators that I'm talking to are also parents of neurodivergent children. So I often have criers in my sessions because it kind of
it hits a chord.
Absolutely. But then what breaks my heart though, I was speaking at a conference on Monday, and a lady came over to me and she was just in floods of tears, and she said, I just feel incredibly guilty that I've only just heard about this stuff from you, and all of the things that I've done, potentially, asked children to do that wasn't affirming, and I just feel incredibly guilty. And I was kind of saying to her, we don't know what we don't know, but now we know it, we can do something different, and we can approach our children differently. But please don't feel guilty. You're doing it now, and you will then make a difference, and you will have that impact.
I suppose what else comes to mind for me is that when you've all the work that you're doing with the early years sector and education and stuff like that, is actually the knock on for parents is actually when they can send their children to an early years provision and know that it is neuroaffirming and will do the very best for their children. The stress levels for parents go to, I mean, and I know, trying to have your kids in education when they've got additional needs is incredibly stressful. And it just depends, and it really does depend on whether those education staff get it. And the work that you're doing, I can see the knock on further. Although it's great that you're reaching those teachers, but actually being able to reach those teachers then reaches those parents and via the children, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I do talk lots about how we can work with our families too, because, in order for us to support our children in our early years spaces to thrive, we've got to support the whole family unit. And, I'll often hear educators talking about maybe the barriers that parents are putting up because they're not ready to have that conversation yet in terms of their pathway to understanding, acknowledging, and accepting the differences that they're seeing in their children. And that can be from a variety of different reasons. It could be from a cultural perspective. It could be because of their own experiences. It could be because of their own neurodivergence that maybe they're only just discovering through the conversations and what they're seeing in their child. And they're not ready to have that conversation with the educator yet. So it's also about the relationship and the connection and that sense of belonging that we are providing for our parents of our children in the early years space. And I really sort of bark on about the message around, we need to make sure our parents do not feel judged, do not feel criticized. You know, if for a parent, the only way that you can have your child eat a meal is in front of an iPad, as an educator, don't judge me for that, because my main concern is getting nutrients into my child. If my child is 4 or 5 and is still sleeping in my bed with me, don't judge me, because that's the only way that any of us are getting any sleep. And I've got to get up. I've got to get up for work the next day. I need to get my child into school, because otherwise they're on at me for attendance. That's the only way that we're going to be able to do it. So don't judge me for it. Understand where that's coming from, and provide a safe space for me to be able to laugh about my situation, cry about my situation, scream about my situation. But just make sure that, yes, you're providing that space, that safe space for my child, but I also need it as a parent too, so that I can support my child and advocate for my child and have the strength, you know, to face the world out there that isn't always accepting.
When you think back to when, you know, maybe your boys were younger, your kids were younger, did you get a sense of being judged as a parent? I mean, you probably still do, but especially when they're young and you're first kind of discovering what's going on and you're going through that stage of working out what this is all about. A very steep learning curve. Usually as a parent, it's usually like straight up.
Absolutely. And I, you know, yes, I'd worked in early years, but I hadn't really at that point had much experience in terms of SEN. That wasn't where I was at. You know, yes, I'd kind of dabbled, if you like, in terms of some of the children that I'd seen in the family centre I was working with, but they had quite complex needs alongside neurodivergent. So I hadn't necessarily seen anybody like my son and the things that he was exhibiting, you know, when we were at home and when we were out and about. But yeah, I mean, I talk quite a lot about the fact that I knew that my son was autistic at 2.5, but I couldn't say it out loud because that scared the hell out of me. I was starting to see differences very quickly. I was starting to identify the need for that routine and structure. And if it wavered off that slightly, oh my gosh, we knew about it. I remember once I lived near Chessington World of Adventures, and every Wednesday I only worked sort of a half day, so I could pick him up from nursery. He was only in the morning session, and I'd pick him up from nursery. And quite often when the season was open, you could get a toddler pass for Chessington. So we used to go quite a lot, just the two of us. It was our thing. You know, every now and again we'd go to Chessington because it was cheap and cheerful with our toddler pass. But I started to notice that we were always following the same route around the park. There was always the things that we had to do first, and then next, and then next, and then, Mummy, I want to do this now. Mummy, I want to do that now. And he was 3 years old, and he was a very articulate 3-year-old. So we used to, you know, drive up to Chessington, go into the car park, and follow this route. And then on one occasion, it was the summer holidays, and a friend of mine was going with her children. They were slightly older, but she said, "Oh, you've got the pass, haven't you? Why don't you come and join us for the day?" And I was like, yes, that would be fab. Let's come along. You know, my son loves Chessington. Let's go. So we rock up to the car park, and just as we're going to turn into the car park, the attendant says, "Stop," and says, "Car park full. go to the overflow car park. So I've now not turned right into the car park.
Yeah.
I've had to go straight on to get to the overflow car park. Well, I had my 3-year-old trying to escape out of the back of the car, trying to get out of his car seat, screaming, hitting the passenger seat in front of me, telling me, we're not going to Chesington. You told me we're going. Why we're not going? Screaming, because was not normal. This was not our route into Chesington. So I quickly got us into the overflow car park and kind of went into the back of the car and tried to kind of regulate and calm. But then we approach the park from a different gate, don't we, when we're walking up to it, not the one that we normally do. And the whole day was off kilter because the start of it wasn't the way that he was expecting it to start. So yeah, I identified things very early, but I did, and even from some family members, and not through malice, but because they just did not understand. So I remember writing a letter, typing up a letter on my computer and sending it to my in-laws and to family members, really just, this is what it means. This is what it's about. This is what I'm, you know, when he got his diagnosis, but you know, this is the why. And that then I think really started my journey of understanding around autism. He was then, we then got sensory processing differences kind of understood through OT and stuff as well. But yeah, and you know, and going out and about, the eye rolls from the people that were judging you as a parent because your child, you know, wanted a sweet and you weren't going to give it to them, or you know, wanted a certain thing and it wasn't available, so you know, he'd throw himself on the floor, or that need to do something right now, so it would come with the meltdowns and the screams, and it was certainly out in public. But then when it, you know, even when he was in primary school, we were just going through the sort of assessment process for diagnosis. And the Senko said, in order for him to get some support, he needs to throw a few more chairs around the room. Yeah. So even in education settings, it's like, well, you know, he's not bad enough.
Yeah.
You know, because he liked the routine and structure at school.
Yeah.
He was fairly academic.
Yeah.
So, you know, you do, and it comes from so many different angles.
Yeah.
And that's
like
where
some of that is some of it's well intentioned, isn't it? And you know, I think people have a good intention at times, and they're at times misinformed, you know. And I think now about what I know, when I think back to like me pre-kids, and you know, the times when, you know, autism, for example, was very medical model based, and deficit based.
Yeah.
The shift, you know, and I think that's definitely come from, you know, autistic people's real life experiences and the internet, and being able to talk about that and letting everybody know what it actually is really like for us. That's been so important. But I think the judgment comes from being probably misinformed or ill-informed, or
and I think as well it's that difference.
yes.
And people are scared of difference because they don't know why.
Yeah.
And where it comes from. And you know, anything that's a little bit different to, you know, the neuronormative, you know, why is that the neuronormative anyway? Why is it neurodivergence the neuronormative?
My son says that to me. He says, how do neurotypical people know that they're not the ones that are different?
Absolutely.
I can't answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it is that. And I think, you know, COVID kind of opened up a little bit more for us in terms of that understanding of hidden disabilities. Although I do think, you know, most of the world has gone back to how things were pre-COVID, quite honestly, in terms of judgment and, you know, tolerance of difference. But yeah, I kind of feel like I'm, you know, yes, I'm incredibly busy. Yes, I've probably spoken to thousands and thousands of educators over the last 4 years, but I still feel that there is a long way to go. A long way to go. So I'll keep banging on until everyone's heard.
Good. I suppose one of the questions I was going to ask you as well was, if you could go back to your younger self, what would you tell yourself? What piece of advice would you give yourself if you could go back?
It's all going to be all right,
Yeah.
I think.
Feel it at the time, does it?
No, when you're going through it, it really, really doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, I was lucky enough to start my parenting journey when social media wasn't such a big thing.
Mhm.
I think I only got Facebook when, my youngest was about 6.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, we see this social media, Instagram life, don't we? And we think that that's, again, going back to the first thing we were talking about, how it should be. And, you know, there, your life's different, and it's okay. I mean, I've been on a very big journey. I'm a divorcee and remarried. And so, in terms of life generally,
Yeah.
things have gone a different pathway to what I thought. But I think, I talk a lot about the emotions that we go through as parents. And the biggest one, certainly working in early years,
Mm.
I was looking forward to the day when I was going to have my own early years person.
Yeah.
You have these preconceived ideas of what life's going to be like as a parent, and how things are going to pan out for your children, and you have these things in your head, don't you? Oh, they're going to be able to do this, and they'll, all
Yeah.
the parties we're going to have, and all the things we're going to do, and the sleepovers, and this is what we're going to have as a family and as a life, and because that's how you see everybody else's life. And then you quickly realize that, yeah, you're not going to necessarily have the matching pajama Christmas shot on Instagram that everybody else has. So, and I guess it goes back to, what we were just talking about with our children. Our children are different, and
Mm.
it's okay.
Mm.
My parenting journey has been different,
Yeah.
but it's been okay.
Yeah.
Probably a bit more hair dye needed because the grays that are coming through. Um, but and I'm a different person to who I used to
Yeah.
be because of my children. At school, I was the follower. I didn't want to stick my head above the
No.
parapet and be different. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like everybody else. And when my mum wouldn't let me go to the Madonna concert with my friends because she was a bit risque and I shouldn't because it would impact me, I was devastated because I wanted to go and be like everybody else.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to watch EastEnders because my dad said that we would end up
Oh,
talking about
really?
we would end up talking like the people in EastEnders, and he
Well,
thought
my
that
mum said they have no morals in EastEnders,
yeah,
so you're not watching it. I watch it all the
but
time now.
I- but everybody else was watching EastEnders,
Yeah.
so I felt like I was an outsider, and I couldn't bear that. I couldn't bear
Yeah.
that, and I wanted to do everything. I wouldn't, be confrontational. I wouldn't have a different opinion to anybody else because no, I needed to be like that.
Yeah.
Well, I now speak at events in front of 200 people, and people call me a disruptor. So life has changed quite a bit. And
And do
that's
you think that's what part of that was parenting and
absolutely,
having to do things differently?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
my children have, on the one hand, I've been forced to be that parent because
Yeah.
of the differences in my children and the way society sees my children. And I'm like, I don't think so. I need to advocate for my children. But it's because I've had to do that that I'm now the person that I am now.
Mm.
The person that will kind of reach out to people, that we're the person that will, potentially put something a little bit controversial on social media, because I want people to think a little bit differently and start viewing our children through this neurodiversity.
Easily for you though, because I think for me, I still struggle with that at times. And I'm
No,
like kind of, when I think back to school, I never spoke in school. I was the one at the back. Don't ask me to say anything. And I think I don't know where it changed, and I don't think it's completely changed. I still have that internal kind of anxiety about being able to speak out and be very vocal for my kids. So yeah, it kind of, I presume some people will find it, some people are just naturally more outspoken, aren't they? And they'll just be like that. Other people are much quieter and much shyer, and they find that more difficult. Some of us are forced into it. We have to become that parent. I suppose,
I do.
is that
I do.
easy?
Yeah, no, I do. And sometimes before I press the publish button, it's
Yeah.
still, how's this one gonna
Should I
go?
put it in?
Yeah. But do you know what? I also think back, and I was speaking at an event about 18 months ago, and I stood there and I kind of started by saying, I'm here, yes, for me, but I'm also here for the parents whose voices can't be
Yeah.
heard. Those parents of those children who have learning needs themselves, have English as an additional
Yeah.
language, um, are are not who are not in a position to be able to be here today to have their voice heard. Um, and I feel like I'm waving their flag too.
Mhm.
So, there are still days where I think I can't say that, I can't do that. But then there are it's kind of moving on now. And I think because things are built for me with the
Yeah.
business, and I'm
Yeah.
getting that, I guess I'm getting that validation for the message that I am giving. It's that no, actually, we need this more. Although saying that in terms of your kind of fear around it, I can't use Twitter or X because
No.
that scares me. Because I think if I put something on there, I'm gonna get yeah,
Yeah. Well, I've half dabbled in TikTok and then thought, ooh, not really
yeah,
sure about that one.
yeah. TikTok. I feel too old for TikTok.
Yeah, me too.
Um, but yeah, so I have my safety net. I have my Instagram and my Facebook group, and it's kind of lovely. And I kind of feel like I've got people that you know, are right there alongside me in those.
And I was just going to say then about a support system behind you, because I suppose to give us this confidence to say what we need and to be more outspoken or, push for the needs of our kids. It's sometimes as well, it's around having that backup, isn't it? Like it might be it's other colleagues that you work with, or whether it's family members or other people that get it, that have been there. I suppose it's having that support system behind you is, I think I've found really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm not gonna, it's probably a whole other podcast. I'm not gonna go into ex-husband and new husband, but I'm now in a position where I have somebody championing me
Yes.
and what I'm doing. And
Makes a big
um,
difference, doesn't it?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, it really, really does. Somebody saying, do you know what? I've got your back.
Yeah.
I really have got your back. And I'm going to be with you 100%. It makes a massive difference. It
Yeah.
really, really does.
Yeah. If you had a top tip or a piece of advice you could give a parent that right now in this moment is thinking, do you know what, I'm really struggling. I can't, I don't know if I can keep going. This is, I'm really finding this hard. What would be your bit of advice, your top tip for them?
I think for me, it probably kind of comes back to what we were just saying. It's find your tribe.
Yeah.
You can't do this alone, and it's okay not to do it on your own. For years, I felt like I was doing it on my own.
Mm.
And it's hard work, especially when you're reaching out to the agencies and the professionals for
Yeah.
advice and guidance, and you get nowhere. Um, it's finding your tribe, finding your people, wherever those people come from. I found great comfort in the early days through a Facebook group that was my local National Autistic Society group.
Okay.
I found real comfort in, do you know what? This is not just me.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're awake because your child's not sleeping or your child's having a meltdown, trashing their room, and you know that if you're going to go in, you're going to stoke the fire. So you just sit outside the room and just kind of let them know every now and again that you're still there and you're holding space, but you've got your phone and you're sat there and you're kind of going, oh, thank goodness this is not just me. Somebody else is doing this right now too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's finding your tribe and and by that could be, like I say, people in person. It could be people at the other end of your phone on a group, or a feed that you follow that is aligned with yours. But if you can find those physical people, those people that you can go round to their house with your child, and they know that if your child doesn't play with their child or doesn't sit at the table for lunch that they've lovingly prepared for you coming over, it really does not matter. The child, it's okay for your child to come around and just sit in their coat with their Switch in the corner on a beanbag. They know that that's okay, and they're not going to judge you or criticize you for that. Or they say, come over, I'll make sure I get in the white bread that he likes with the peanut butter that he likes to make his sandwich for lunch, so that he can have lunch with us. Those people where you can cry with them and literally soak their shoulder, and they don't try and fix it for you. They just, again, hold space with you.
That's a really important bit, isn't it? That bit about, we don't need to be fixed. But this is hard, and I just need someone to go, I hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, I don't need somebody to say, I understand, because if you're raising a neurotypical child, no, you don't.
No, you don't. You really don't.
But just somebody that goes, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I hear you, and I'm going to hold this space for you.
Yeah.
But also those parents that are in the same position as you, that you can just laugh about the craziness that is your life. And the things that from an outsider you're like, oh my God, you can't, how are you laughing about that? You can't laugh about that. That's really not funny. And you're like, do you know what? It wasn't at the time, but now I've got to laugh about it, because if I don't, I'm going to cry. And I've done enough crying. I've run out of tears. So I am going to laugh about it. So it is finding your tribe, and whatever that looks like, but it's finding your people that are going to have your back in those real bad, tough moments, but can also experience just the joy and craziness of being that parent with you. And just other people that are in your shoes, and so you feel like you're not on your own doing this, because it can feel like that some days. When you're out and about, there are some days where you can, fight back at the judgment and the criticism from the public that are clearly, gobsmacked or appalled by the way that your child is behaving. And there are days that you can fight back because you've got enough spoons in your drawer to be able to fight back. But there are days when you go, I'm just going to pick my child up off the floor, and we're going to go home. And we're going to stay at home now for the next 3 weeks, because I can't face going out until I've refilled my emotional cup and I am ready to take this on again. I can't do it. But who's with you in those moments? It's
really important, that bit, isn't it? I think, like you said earlier, about having someone that's championing for you, championing you. Because I think often as parents, we're there for our kids and we're doing a lot for everybody else. But actually, who's your backup team? Who's your tribe? Who's got their hands on your back going, you're okay, I've got you.
And that sometimes is all it needs. I've got you. And like I say, just not coming in with the strategies for X, Y, and Z, but I've got you. I'm here. Do what you need to do. Do you need to scream? Do you need to rant? Do you need to go and go to sleep for an hour? Do you just need to sit in your onesie and eat chocolate? Do you need a Baileys with that as well? What is it? What is it you need? Or my husband, bless him, every now and again he'll kind of say, I've booked you a massage for tomorrow. I mean, I know that's really luxurious, but something that I wouldn't do because I haven't got time to do it, or I've got to do this. He's like, no, I'm going to take Little football. You go. And we're not all in a position to have someone like that. And trust me, it's taken years and a divorce and lots of money to get to that point. But it could be a friend, it could be a neighbor, it could be another mum at the school, just someone that sees you at the school gate. Kind of says, what?
Once I had a friend just came, she made dinner for her family, and she gave me some of the dinner and just said, you look knackered, and gave me the dinner to go home with. And it was something as small as that. And for her, she was just like, I was making it anyway. Just put
Exactly.
some in a pot and gave it to you. I mean, the kids would never have eaten it because it was different. But for me, it was like, that's me
I'm having
sorted
that.
for tonight. I can
Yeah.
just sort them out rather than cook 3 different meals. Of now we're going to got to cook two. But
Yeah.
it made such a such a small thing. And I often think I should go back and say to her, do you know how much difference that
That
made?
impact that has. Yeah, absolutely. And I say that sometimes to, to the educators that I'm working with, when they talk about, parents that are not, they're in denial, they're not, they won't talk to us, so we can't make the referral, so we can't put the support in for the child. And I've said, you know what, have you ever asked them just at drop off, have you got to rush off? Have you got a meeting to go to? Or, and if they say, no, I just need to, do you want a cuppa? Just
Yeah.
come in for a cuppa. I've just got,
It's
another
such a
parent,
difference, isn't it?
another parent brought in some chocolates yesterday. I was just going to go and stick the kettle on. Do you want a cuppa? And talk about everything else other than their child. And not even, are you okay?
Yeah.
Just, oh God, did you see that documentary last night? Or, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is.
It's everyday stuff.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
you're
Oh,
a human being.
I like your top. Where did you get that from? Oh, I need to get myself a new winter coat. Where did you get that one from? Oh, let's go and have a chat. Just,
Yeah.
just, I like it goes back to that, I've said it before, just hold space.
Yeah.
Just be that person that is willing to offer that parent just some time. Because,
Absolutely.
that can make a massive difference.
Huge, huge
Yeah.
difference. Cheryl, thank you ever so much. Thank you for talking. I really enjoyed the chat today. But what I wanted to do just at the end was just kind of give you a chance to talk about where people maybe can find you, because I know people will have listened to this and thought, oh, we definitely need to speak to you. We need to get you in to talk to people. So where can they find you? I know you've got your book coming out. So, what's that called? Where can we find that? So tell us where we can find some stuff about you. I'll also put some bits at the bottom. So I know we'll kind of get links and stuff, and I'll put that at the bottom for everyone so they can access it. But tell us a bit about what you've got going on.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, you can come and find me at Aperion, Aperion, Aperion Training, .co.uk. There are some free downloads, primarily for educators. I'm building some stuff for parents, but there are some free downloads in
Do you
there.
find the parents sometimes share it with educators?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've also got an ebook, 19-page ebook that you can download on there. You'll also find links on there and also on my Instagram and Facebook page, Aperion_training. I have a podcast too.
Yeah.
I've had some amazing guests, haven't
Have
I?
you? Who's
Yes,
that?
I have. This great OT that I spoke to. So yeah, I've had some amazing neurodiversity affirming
Yeah.
parents of children with a variety of different neurodivergent conditions, lots and lots of different things. I put lots of stuff on my social media around becoming that neurodiversity affirming educator. But yeah, come and find me if you're an educator, if you're working in a nursery or a school.
Yeah.
Certainly for training, for CPD days. I also go into settings and work with settings on the environment.
So
And
important.
really supporting, Cheryl, I'm standing there with a Senko, with a child in front of us who's having a really tough day, and we're talking about strategies. I model different strategies too. So yeah, come and find me. My podcast is on Spotify and Apple too. But yeah, come and get in touch if anyone's got any questions, comments, or just really just wants to have a chat. Then I will be part of your tribe.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.